Hello everyone, this is Anya. Welcome back to another video at Round 3 Designs. Today I have a Magic Iris card from Lawn Fawn to share with you. So excited about this Magic Iris, it's awesome. So I'm starting with the Superstar stamp set, and this is just a scrap piece of Bristol paper that I used for another project. And don't mind the other stamping there, those are previews, those are things coming up. And I don't know why I didn't bring out my Misty stamping tool. I should have, because this is the first time I'm using these stamps and I didn't quite get a good impression of that mouse, but I will fix that later. So here's a little telescope, and I'm going to take out my just plain black Sharpie pen. This is intended for journaling and writing. It's not a marker, and I'm just going to fill in what I didn't get there. So I'm using Bristol paper and VersaFine Onyx black ink so that I can use my Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens. And for the belly of the mouse, I used the color gray tint. Yes, gray tint. And for the ears and the nose, I used blush and gray tint. And then for the body of the mouse, I'm using green gray. I know they call it green gray, but it's not very green. It's more brown. And that gives it a nice taupey color. And I'm just scribbling on the color and blending it out with my water brush pen. And there's a close-up for you. Moving on to the telescope. For this color, I am using gray-brown for the tripod, and then natural gray and gray for the telescope. And again, you can see here, I'm literally just scribbling it on and blending it with another color, and then I blend it all out with my water brush pen. The water brush pen that I use is from Faber-Castell, and I really like the syringe part of it to help get water in the barrel. It works so nice, much easier than squeezing it. And there's a close-up there for you. And moving on to, I'm going to fussy cut these out, and I'm not going to cut that tail. It's way too thin. I'm not going to deal with it. So when I fussy cut, I like to take either my scissors or a craft knife and do what I call reverse cuts, which I zoomed in for you there so you can see that. I'm just doing the cuts that are awkward for me to do with scissors, that are the wrong way, because I'm right-handed. To cut that way would rip the paper or cut into my image. So I like to do those little cuts first, and then they're already done. And you can see when I get to them, I just flip around the corner because that cut is already complete. And as I go around curves and things, if they're putting too much stress on the paper, I will just cut that piece of paper off, the part that's causing the stress, and it helps so that I don't get any rips or tears into it. And then I'm going to go around all of the edges, because this is a white paper, it has a white core, and I go around the edges with my Memento Tuxedo black marker. And here again, here's the reverse cuts that I do. Anything that's awkward for my scissors to get in there, these little tiny places that would rip if I were trying to get in there with my scissors. And I'm just doing the back end there. I almost forgot the top part on that side. So now I'm just ready to go around each of the edges, and you'll watch as I get to the eyepiece here, it's already done. So I just flip up and go around the back end, and because I thought it was it's kind of a rounded eyepiece there, so I just cut off the remainder of the paper so that it didn't stress as I was going around the curve. And then for the ends of the feet, again, they're curved, so I'm going to make those curves first and then come in and do my straight cuts at the end. There we go. Oh, they're going around that one. And then because I did already some pre-cuts there, I don't have to get all the way into the corner because it's already been done. And it's much easier to just snip long cuts that way. And then again, I'll go around the edges of this one with my Memento Tuxedo black ink marker here. Get in those little tiny crevices. And there we go. And now we're going to move on to the Magic Iris. Now here is a graphic that I've held. I'm going to hold this for you so I can explain. These are all the pieces that you need. Starting at the top in the orange are the sausage pieces. And then the blue is our stabilizer pieces. The green will be the rings, and there's 3 that are already pre-cut with an accent cut into the third. And then the fourth one will be my background. And then the red are your tab and your decorative tab, and you only need one of each of those. Just so that you guys are all aware, I am doing things in a different order. Here's that piece that you cut one out of one of your rings for you here. If you've not already watched the video over on Lawn Fawn's channel that Kelly Marie did for the explanation, the intro to the Magic Iris, go check that out. It's awesome. She does a much better job of explaining than I probably will. So I'm going to get some inks and ink up this panel. And this is my daughter saying hello. She thought I was going to cut this out, but I'm not. You guys can all giggle at her with me. And I've got my craft mat here from Heidi Swap, and I'm going to ink up these colors to look like a kind of a night sky, but more of a twilight sky. I don't want it to be too dark. And so I'm starting with peacock feathers and then blending in some blueprint sketch, and then I will darken it all with black soot. And this is Distress Oxide ink, so that it's a little more of a chalky texture. And for all of these colors, I'm using just one brush. I was feeling extremely lazy this day, and I am only using one brush. I didn't want to clean multiple brushes, so as I'm going through and blending these colors, I just wipe off the excess onto a microfiber cloth that I have on my lap, and then I just move on to the next color. I think it does help with the blending a little bit to blend a little more because there's still some residual color left on the brush. And that's looking good, so I'm going to run it through my die cut machine. The one I'm using today is the Crafter's Companion Gemini die cutting machine. And there we are, cute ring, and I'll put the center back in here in just a moment. There we go. I'm going to spray these from about a foot above with water. This is just plain water in a distress sprayer, and then I blotted it dry with my microfiber cloth. Then I pulled out the Lawn Fawn Liquid Stardust. This is the most beautiful pearlescent. I've watered it down a bit so that it will spread because it's quite concentrated. And I'm just taking a small brush. This is a silver brush, black velvet size 2 brush, and I'm just splattering it. You can see here in the light as I tilt it. Look at all that shimmer. It's so pretty. Then this is real time so that you can see it shimmer in here. I thought that was looking linear, so I turned it sideways and added a little bit more to it. So make it look a little bit more random. I'll clean this up and move on to the next part. All right, get all these pieces over here. Now to work on the rings. For the adhesive for the sausages, you need to use the mini size glue dot. It's the 3/16 of an inch. I have these ones that come in sheets. I really like these because I can pre-apply my adhesive. Now this is where I go a little backward in the assembly. They recommend to decorate your sausages and pieces first before you put adhesive on it, but I decided to do adhesive first so that all of my inking doesn't have to dry before I can put the adhesive on, because the adhesive won't stick to wet ink. And I've decided that I'm going to ink the tab as well, so I'll pull that back out and ink this real quick. These are the exact same colors. I just use these 3 for most of the pieces until I get to the actual background, which I will only add one more color, which is Forest Moss. You'll see that soon. So those are all done. Again, same brush, using all the same one. And I'm going to ink these up with the same colors, but I decided that was too much room with the liners that it comes with. So I cut each of the liners into a quarter of the size, just enough to barely cover the adhesive. And you'll see as I ink it up here, it masks off the adhesive so there is no ink that gets on it, and it will stick properly and adhere correctly. And you need the mini size glue dots because this will create a pivot point on one of the rings, and as the rings turn, that's what manipulates the sausage pieces in order to make the actual iris. So here we go, just doing the blue, making it a little darker with the black. I want these center pieces to be as light or a little bit lighter as the center ring. I don't want it as dark as the outside because I want it to be a focal point. Again, I sprayed it with water from about a foot above and then blotted that off. And once again, I'll pull out the Lawn Fawn Liquid Stardust again and splatter that on because we need more stars. Gotta have them all. There we go. And I'll slow this down again here so you can see that here we go, real time right here. And zoom in so you can see that beautiful shimmer. Just love it. And that one didn't have very much on it, so I'll splatter some more again. Just love the way it catches the light. Just beautiful. I'm going to pull out the Superstar stamp set again, and then on screen I've put the Upon a Star stamp set from Lawn Fawn that coordinates very well. You can see that now it has, with all those other constellations, it has now a star constellation to go with them. And I'm going to heat emboss this on the center circle from that ring. And I've got my powder tool so that my embossing powder doesn't stick. I've just dabbed it on there and brushed it off. And I'm stamping with Versamark ink. And here is where I was going to go with white. And then I decided, let's be more fun and go with glow in the dark. So I'm going to stamp this glow in the dark one first. Get that all on there. And you'll see as I heat emboss this in the light, this is my heat gun that I used, the Wagner. I'm going to hold this at an angle, and you can see as it melts, it disappears, and you can't really see it anymore. So then I'm going to put my greeting on top of that, and it's going to read, "Have a stellar day." This is another of their fonts that goes together with other stamp sets. This is their offset font. So it has an outline as well as a solid image that fills it in. And I decided to go with this phrase because I wanted to keep it open-ended. So I could do this for a birthday or for a congratulations or for a boost, a thinking of you card, something like that. So I'm just lining it up here, and I remembered I need to put my powder on there so my embossing powder doesn't stick. That's just my powder tool. And I'll stamp this also in Versamark. And I didn't stamp all of the words together because I wanted them to be closer than the stamps allow for themselves. I wanted them to be closer together and scooch them in and make them nice and compact. So this is the Ranger Super Fine Detail in white embossing powder that I'm using. And there you can see it says "Have a stellar day." Again, I'm using my Wagner heat tool. I heat it up off screen beforehand before I bring it to the embossing powder, and then it goes faster. And you can see here the star in the background here. I'm going to try and get some glow in the dark footage here so you can see. There's that cute little star constellation. And now I'm going to put my tab together here. I'm putting adhesive underneath so that I can inlay the arrow in that tab, and then I will put that on top of the actual longer tab that moves it. I love these reverse grip tweezers. They help with everything. That's looking good. So now I'm going to start assembling. Again, this is backward from what they recommend. I am using the stabilizers first, and then I will put my sausage pieces in. They recommend to do the sausage pieces and adhere a ring together before they do this, but I wanted to show you here. I am taking the stabilizer and I'm not lining it up with the exact spot it needs to be. I'm moving it less than 1/8 of an inch, just a little bit, so that it leaves a little bit more room between those two stabilizers. And here I'll show you why. I couldn't wait to use this, so I made one already off screen, and you'll see this in a future video. But in between the stabilizers, this is the closed position, and then on this stabilizer, that's the open position. And so when you go between the two, those are the stoppers as well as what holds the actual rings together. And when you get to that top part, it stops, but there still leaves a hole. So I'm going to give it a little bit extra room so that when it closes all the way, it closes from the iris parts running into each other rather than the stopper, and then it won't leave a hole. So now I'm starting with the first sausage piece, and I put it into its little hole that it goes into, and I'm lining it up with the shape of the ring. They all line up perfectly, and because I don't have 6 hands, I'm going to tape this down and make sure that it stays exactly where I want it to stay. And then I'm going to remove the liners from the adhesive, those glue dots, and I decided they were still wiggling a little too much, so I'm going to tape down the other ends as well. I do want this to be right exact because you can see the edges of these when your final iris is done. And then you just lay one ring on top, and this is where that tab comes and lays on, is this layer. So you want to make sure that it is next to one of the stabilizers, and it makes a V shape there at the bottom. That's one thing that's integral there for it to work. You want it to be near the other stopper is what it is. So then I'm going to take the last plain layer of the rings and I'm going to lay that on top of all of the other ones. And then you just gently fold up these stabilizers. You don't want it to be too tight because then it will make the iris not move. And I was like, oh no, what did I do? But then I remembered I taped it together, so of course it's not going to move. So I'm going to remove, this is the Thermoweb 1/2 inch purple tape, and I like this tape because it doesn't take off your ink. If you have already inked something, it doesn't take off your color. And I did miss a piece of tape, but don't worry, I catch it later. And now I'll give it a good test and see it does not hit that stopper, but it does not have a hole because it's stopping on itself rather than the actual stopper. Then it opens and closes. It's working perfectly. And in that open position, you can see a little bit of the tabs for the sausages, and they say just to fold them over. That's what they recommend. So I've got those folded over. You don't put adhesive on them. And then I'm just putting adhesive on the tops and the bottoms of only the stabilizers, because these are the only places that it's going to attach to the card and also to the decorative piece that I'm going to put on top there. So I'm ready to put that decorative piece on. I'm going to take the liners off this adhesive and just line that up. And everything lines up perfectly because it was all cut with the same die and it's working beautifully. Love it. This is such a brilliant idea. I love Lawn Fawn's interactive stuff. It's just so smart. And I'm just lining everything up to make sure it all looks the way I want it to look. And we are ready to move on to the next part. With this release, their spring release, they also released these new stencils. So I picked up the Grassy Hillside stencils. These are awesome because not only do they have grid lines to help you line them up, but they work as masks and stencils. And I will use this one piece as both a mask and a stencil. And there I caught that last piece of tape that I had missed earlier. And I'm just lining it up, making sure that what my goal is to keep the tab within the base of the card when it's open and when it's closed. So whether it's open or closed, it will go back in the envelope. So I opened it and I marked where it's going to be on the actual card. And I've marked the bottom of it so I know where to put my horizon line. And here we go, lining up the stencil. I'll get that mask off. This is the last color that I bring in. This is the Forest Moss. Again, I'm using the same brush to blend this because I'm being very lazy. And I do, when I'm blending, you've probably noticed all along, but I do tap off and pick up the color that I do put on my craft mat. And there I've used it as the stencil and it worked great. Now I'm going to line it up and use it as a mask so that all of my sky won't have any green and I don't have to cut those fiddly bits of that wonderful grass border. So I'm starting with the black soot, and I'm not putting too much black soot in the middle of the horizon. I want it to be more blue there, so I'm going to leave that open until I get all of my black around the edges that I want and make it a little more blue. And then there's nice blue at the horizon line there that looks more natural. And then I'm going to just blend out a little bit of the peacock feathers there. And then just as I did with all of my other ink blended pieces, I'm going to spray it with water and blot it off, and then add the Lawn Fawn liquid stardust, again splattered. I'm not worried about the center because that's where my magic iris is going. I'm just going around the edges with it, and that's looking beautiful. Everything's all cleaned up. And now we are ready to adhere. So I am just lining things up. This Hillside works perfectly with the mouse and the telescope because the telescope needs to be on a higher plane for it to line up with the mouse's eye. So that works perfectly to put it on a hill. So I've removed the adhesive from my magic iris. Again, it's just on those 3 stabilizer bits. I've centered it on my card base or my panel that will go on my card base. Now I'm going to put the greeting in the center. And this is a tight fit as you put this in here, but if you just work it in nicely and gently, it will fit down through all of those rings. And I'm just pulling it to the sides and making sure, running my tweezers underneath the edges to make sure it goes underneath everything. And here is where I run into a bit of a problem. And you'll notice It's those tabs that got folded under from the sausage pieces. So they are catching on that center part that I just put through, my greeting part, and it catches right there, it runs into them. So it either goes under or over it, but as it does go under it, it's bowing my card base or my card panel. So I'm tucking them back under as it goes under, or tucking them over because you can't see it underneath the actual iris part, the sausages part, as it closes, but it's still bowing my paper. So instead of trying to pull it all apart and make sure that my center part is flat enough for those little tabs to go under, I am just going to flip the tabs back from where I folded it, and I'm just going to trim off that little bit that shows around the outside of the iris part, the outside of the ring. And I slowed this down to real time here for you so you can see that I'm being slow and deliberate and careful, that I'm not cutting my rings, but I want to make sure that it is not visible and that I don't cut off the stopping parts of the sausages that I need. So it still needs to have a little bit of that cut. It still needs to have the outside of it so it works as a stopper. And this is when it's fully open. And there we go. And that's working much better. And you can see that it doesn't show on the outside and it's not bowing my paper. Now I'm going to put my little telescope and mouse on. So I'll grab my tweezers to hold him. The adhesive I use, my liquid adhesive that I prefer, is the Tombow Mono Multi Glue. It comes in the green bottle. And I put it inside of a fine line 20 gauge tip bottle. And here I'm going to give the cute little mouse back his tail. That's just drawn on again with my Sharpie pen. That's not a marker because the marker ones will bleed, but that's a pen and it works very nicely. For the adhesive on my telescope, I'm not putting any in the center, so none in that middle part because it is going from the flat part by the mouse up over the top of the iris, which is about, it's about an eighth of an inch, so there's a difference there. And then because this is glowing in the dark, I chose to pull out my honeybee stamps, one-of-a-kind stamps. These have all sorts of interactive instructions and words on there, and it's my current favorite that has the most options. And I picked out the phrase that says "I glow in the dark," and I thought it fit perfectly down here at the bottom. Lawn Fawn does have a few stamps that say "I glow in the dark," but they are stacked up in more of a square. So I went with this one, and I am embossing it with, again, I used my powder tool so nothing sticks where I don't want it, and then I stamped with Versamark ink and embossed with the Ranger Superfine Detail in white. And there we go. That's gonna be the final decoration on my front panel. And my card base that I pulled out here is 4 1/4 by 11, and this is made from the Nina 110-pound cardstock. And then I've put adhesive all over the back and then added some extra strong adhesive, that's score tape, in only where my magic iris is, because this is going to put strain on the card as you open and close it, and I wanted some extra adhesive right there at that part. I had a little bit of overhang that I just cut off because I'm human and I don't make exact straight cuts. And once again, I'm going to pull out the Superstar stamp set and put a greeting on the inside, and this is going to say, "You are a superstar," again with the offset font type that they have here that's open. And I'm just going to stamp it with the same inks that I've already had out. And I'll do the Superstar in the blueprint sketch. And then I was being lazy and didn't clean off my stamps. And I'm going to add the peacock feathers and then just tapped the edge of it a little bit on my blueprint sketch that says "You are a." So it's now an ombre style. And that'll do it for this card. I'll show you real quick here. This is real time, open and closed, and it's super easy to move. This moves very nicely. I love it. And one more shot of the glow in the dark. And that does it for this card. Again, thank you so much for coming to watch my videos. I really appreciate all of you coming and spending your time with me. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you'd like notifications for any of the new videos that are coming up soon. And as always, I will place the products used and as many links as I can get for you in the description box below. So thanks again. I'll see you next time. Bye.